So what about student loans? Hi everyone, I'm Scott Schwartz. I have reverse engineered the way that banks, the wealthy and Fortune 500 companies use their money so that my clients can go from broke to banker. Bottom line, I teach people how to eliminate their debt in 1/3 their current pace while investing those same dollars without paying any more than they are already guaranteed. So what about student loans? They've been in the news a lot lately. And we talked last week about how your debt is not your fault, how the system is rigged against us. And there we were using home mortgages as the example of that and how they work, specifically with amortization. Student loans are also amortized, but there's even an additional factor that makes them so difficult to eliminate. And that gives us an indication of just how difficult the lending industry is to work with, how unfair. Now, did you know that student loans cannot be discharged even in bankruptcy? It's the only form of loan that is specifically listed as not being protected by bankruptcy. Now, there's, I'll bring up a visual here for you. This first will help us to see just what the extent of the problem is here. A recent Boston College study found that a lot of student debt may never be paid off. Why? Because the federal repayment program is income-based, and if a student is earning less than required to repay the full principal and interest, the debt continues to accrue. So even though that individual may not be paying on it, that doesn't mean the interest stops accruing. Notice, in fact, more than 60% of student loan balances outstanding in 2008 exceed the amount originally borrowed and continues to grow. Imagine that, 13 years later, the debt is higher than when it started. And then you add to that auto loans, credit card debt, mortgage payments, and it's no wonder people are struggling to save for retirement. Actually, another statistic, for Ivy League graduates, the most elite of the elite, right? They graduate with an average of $200,000 in student loan debt. Their first job out of college averages $30,000 a year, their first year out of school. That is why this is such a huge issue, such a huge problem. But it gets worse. Let me go to a different screen here to share with you. And this is where it talks about bankruptcy. Right from nolo.com. As you notice, if, as in most cases, your loans are not discharged in bankruptcy, here's what happens. So there can be an exception. And in fact, it's alluded to in this line here, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. If payment of your loans is not an undue hardship, you'll still owe them when your bankruptcy case is over. Okay, so it mentions the one exception is there is if you can prove that you have an undue hardship. So now imagine this, you're already going through bankruptcy. No, that is not hardship enough. You have to go an extra step, hire a lawyer, go to court, prove that you have, in addition to the bankruptcy, an undue hardship. That's the exception to the rule. But the rule is that you still owe your student loans even when your bankruptcy case is over. In the event of Chapter 13, if you can't discharge your student loans, Chapter 13 bankruptcy provides some other ways that can help. For example, you'll likely be able to pay a reduced amount during your Chapter 13 plan, although, notice this, you'll be on the hook for whatever amount is left after your repayment period ends. In other words, there is no relief. You owe the full amount anyway. And then notice just that first sentence of the next line there, a reminder that the federal government is the lender for a significant percentage of student loans. The federal government backs these loans in most cases. So, as if amortization was not enough, as if the mortgage loans, what we talked about last week, as if that wasn't enough. Your student loan debts are huge, significant. 13 years later, the average student, 60% of students still owe, not just still owe, but owe even more than the original balance. And even bankruptcy does not discharge specifically student loans. Another example of how the system is rigged against us. Once again, your debt is not your fault. The system is broken, and please contact me for more information on what you can do about that to avoid being caught in this cycle of debt in this system. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm Scott Schwartz, nevertoomuchmoney.com.